Swaraj for Lalit Modi. You're watching our continuing coverage, and I want to emphasize once again for our viewers, this is a story that wasn't actually broken by any Indian media house. This was broken by the Sunday Times in the United Kingdom a full 7 days before today. And I want to go across now live to Kathmandu. Joining me from there is Nicola Smith. She's a Delhi-based correspondent of the Sunday Times. She's currently covering the aftermath of the earthquake in Kathmandu, and she's one of the 3 people who worked on putting these stories together. Now, Nicola, welcome to India Today. Could you give our viewers a sense of how the Sunday Times went about putting the story together, and what's been the response in the United Kingdom ever since you published it?
Well, it's a story that we've been working on for several weeks now, and we ran the first story last Sunday, looking more at whether Keith Vaz, in his position as the chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee, had exerted any pressure on the top immigration official of the UK. We ran that story last week, and we then did a follow-up story this week. Now, I would say that after we ran the story last week, the Times Now did actually do a follow-up last Sunday, which didn't seem to have much pick-up at the time, but where they did mention extra correspondence that had mentioned Mrs. Swaraj. And that also featured in our story today when we were doing a follow-up on our piece from last week.
So, Nicola, one thing that I think is very important is the role that Sushma Swaraj weighing in favour of Lalit Modi played in ensuring that Lalit Modi was able to leave the United Kingdom. Now, Sushma Swaraj, in her defence, which I'm sure you've seen, says that I asked the British government to follow its laws and see if a NOC could be granted. Is that how innocent it is, or do you believe that this NOC from the Indian External Affairs Minister is actually what helped Lalit Modi leave the United Kingdom?
I can't really say what went on in the background in the offices where these decisions were made. I can only base any conclusions on what we've seen so far, and obviously we've seen some correspondence that might not give the whole picture. But it certainly it appears to have helped his case that initially he was. His papers were denied, and then there seems to have been a change of decision in the UK about that, and this appears to have followed indications from Mrs. Swaraj that there wouldn't be no detrimental effect on British-Indian relations if he was granted the papers. That appears to have been the case before. During the Congress government, that's what the British authorities believed. So at the moment, we don't have the full picture. But
does this happen often in the United Kingdom, where you have ministers from other countries leaning in individual cases, and is that something the UK pays a lot of attention to, or do you usually in the United Kingdom go by the process, or does a minister making an intervention make a big difference?
I don't know. I don't have an overview of how often this would happen. I don't know whether ministers have weighed in the past or not. The Home Office are saying to us that due process was followed, and the correct procedures were followed. But I mean, would any citizen of India be able to ask a minister for help with that kind of issue? Would it be possible for just an ordinary citizen without any influence to personally ask for a minister to help?
Okay.
And I don't know what the answer to that question is.
Okay, I'm going to leave it over there. Thank you very much, Nicola Smith, for joining us from Kathmandu and sharing your thoughts. Now, Raghav Chera, there are a couple of very important points that are being made by Keith Vaz in his defense. Now, Keith Vaz says that Lalit Modi travelling has actually nothing to do with Sushma Swaraj's intervention. If he's travelling to Venice, to Cuba, which happened just a couple of days ago, he actually travelled on the back of a court order. It was in August last year that a court allowed for Lalit Modi to travel when it said that taking back his passport is not fundamentally correct and that he's allowed to travel. It's only after that that he's been travelling. So he's too much being attached to Sushma Swaraj's NOC.
Please understand, as far as I understand the legal position, despite the fact that the government of India, which is the Modi government, did not appeal for the cancellation of the passport and which was granted to him by the highest court of the country, he still needed permissions by the Indian authorities because blue corner notices, lookout notices for him have been issued by the government of India. That's one. Number two, as far as the policy stand of no party but the government of India is, it is Mr. P. Chidambaram who previously wrote a letter to the government authorities in the UK saying that he needs to be repatriated back to India. So Miss Swaraj has not just showed her nepotism and favoritism and given him a no objection certificate, but she has unilaterally, willfully, at her own whims and fancies, amended and altered the policy stand taken by the government of India. So my question is, will the same treatment be given to every fugitive, or there is a threshold that somebody who's committed a fraud of less than 1,000 crores?
How is it that somebody who's got, you've got FEMA charges against him, he's got match fixing charges against him, spot fixing charges against him, money laundering charges against him, all manner of charges. Why is it that Sushma Swaraj was so keen to help someone with so many cases against him? What's the limit? You know, where does the BJP government help someone who's a fugitive? Where do you draw the line, Shaina?
I don't think we're viewing it like this. We're viewing him as an Indian national who has appealed for help on the basis of his wife suffering from cancer.
Which now, I just told you was, why did the operation need to happen in Portugal? The United Kingdom has medical facilities that are as advanced as the UK. Why are we so keen on facilitating his travel to Portugal? That's
Rahul,
an important
as I
question
said,
too.
you need to ask Mr. Lalit Modi. I'm not his spokesperson. I am the spokesperson of my party, and I only take.
But when a decision of this nature is taken, Shaina, when a decision of this nature is taken, what must also be considered, and I want to quote here the rules in Portugal. Shaina, I'm quoting here now the rules in Portugal. Let me take you through this. Okay, I've pulled out the Euro Patient Rights program. Now, there are several points over here. Okay, it's got 9 points. Now, the point says the patient has the right to decide to take or to refuse health care unless exceptions exist in the law. It says over here, point number 4, Shaina, pay very careful attention, please. A written consent is not required in Portugal. The criminal code stipulates that the consent can be expressed through any means that convey the serious, the free, informed will of the titular of the legally protected interest, which essentially means that the wife's okay was enough. Lalit Modi didn't need to give his consent. So the premise on which he is seeking this NOC, that by itself is a flawed premise. Shaina, NC.
Point well taken, and I think that that point will also be investigated. But to suggest that Lalit Modi knew about it or had suggested that the, he was trying to grope us in the dark are all areas in the grey right now.
No, so I'm glad that you're accepting a point, but shouldn't one second, Sanjay Jha, shouldn't the External Affairs Minister, before making a personal intervention, be trying to do some kind of due diligence in the matter? If the rules in Portugal say the husband's consent is not required, then the very fundamental premise on which you're seeking this NOC, that by itself is flawed, Sanjay Jha.
Absolutely, Rahul. I think what you are actually saying is a very sensational revelation that completely turns the case upside down. Because, end of day, one of the most critical elements that need to be understood in this debate is why haven't disclosures been very transparent? Why weren't they done at that point of time? I mean, Lalit Modi is a very, not just a serious economic offender, he's somebody who's cocked a snook at India. He's actually been very, condescending about Indian legal systems, the kind of statements he's made against CBI, for example. So here is somebody with a lot of hubris who believes he can browbeat the system using his multiple contacts. And that, I think, contact, if it happens to be an external affairs minister, then it is a cause for serious worry. And Rahul, linked to this point is, if this government is going to have an external affairs minister that who's clearly tried to influence the visa documents for Mr. Modi, then you worry about what's going to happen to people who are today working with the income tax, with the enforcement directorate, with the CBI. Is the investigation at all going to be independent, dispassionate, neutral and fair? And if that doesn't happen, then you're going to witness the end of the IPL scam, which will be like completely concealed and put away in a dustbin, and we'll never really know what really happened during those
Javed, there's one instance in this email trail that I'm looking at where Lalit Modi is complaining about not being able to go to Seychelles. He feels suffocated in London. He's not being able to go meet his friend, the president of Seychelles. Now, this is a con job, and our ministers playing a role in facilitating that con job.
Well, absolutely, Rahul. First and foremost, you don't need, he didn't need to travel to Portugal for that operation. His consent was not needed. This attempt to try and cover this up with this cloak of the reasons that are being given by the BJP and their spokesperson, that it was done on humanitarian grounds, it doesn't wash at all. It doesn't wash.
So why then, from the Prime Minister downwards, is everybody in the BJP rushing to defend Sushma Swaraj?
Well, where is the Prime Minister defended? Prime Minister is conspicuous by his silence.
But the fact that Amit Shah is speaking, the fact that Rajnath Singh is speaking, they speak with the Prime Minister's consent.
Rahul, for a Prime Minister who doesn't lose an opportunity to tweet, who doesn't lose an opportunity to communicate, to be silent on an issue, this is the first major crisis facing his government, and he's conspicuous by his silence.
Look, Sanjay Jha, at what Keith was says in this letter. In this letter, Kiswa says, Modi recently met the Prince of Wales and Prince Andrew. Now listen very carefully, Shaina, I want you to pay attention. Both offered to help resolve this matter as Modi was complaining about missing the wedding of his sister and his inability to meet, amongst others, the President of Seychelles. He's feeling suffocated in London. He wants to meet the President of Seychelles, and everyone's going out of his way to ensure that he can have a gala time.
Fancy friends.
Well, Rahul, you have thousands of crores of Indian taxpayers' money somewhere lost in that IPL scam. And here is a person so pregnant with hubris that he's worried about a private holiday, even as he's absconding in a very wonderful, kind of home in London. Now, that tells you the whole gaudy story of crony capitalism in India. And somewhere down the line, Lalit Modi manifests that. Now, I think for Sushma Swaraj to have gone out of her way to try and, favor him or, appease his case, I think it is tragic. I think it's a monumental blunder. And I think the BJP needs to make some amendment on that. I mean, it can't be through cosmetic lip service, because if this government truly, I remember when you and I were doing the IPL issue, I remember how Shashi Tharoor was hounded. I have encountered BJP spokespeople who were vicious, who were not willing to give him an inch. Shashi Tharoor finally went, and all of us felt it was far disproportionate to whatever were the perceived violations.
Now,
how can you have an external affairs minister openly violating government protocol and getting away with it?
Also, Shaina, why is Swaraj Kaushal, Sushma Swaraj's husband, speaking to Keith was trying to get Jyotirmay Kaushal, who's their nephew, admission to a British university? And also Keith was is saying Sushma Swaraj called to see if we can do something to help her nephew get into a law degree program at Sussex. Is that not a misuse of position as leader of the opposition? This in August 2013?
If somebody asks you for guidance for a family member and being in public life,
this is guidance. Shaina, is this how you guide someone, Shaina? Is that, are you even for real? Are you even suggesting that this is guidance, Shaina? You're calling for a favor. Nothing happens without quid pro quo. Why would Keith was help Sushma Swaraj unless he thought tomorrow when I need help, she will be forthcoming too, Shaina?
What does a quid pro quo mean? What does a quid pro quo mean?
You scratch my back, I scratch your back.
Exchange of money. Tell me where.
Does not necessarily mean that there has to be financial transaction.
It's not just financial corruption. Why would someone who's not worthy of getting into Sussex University be allowed to get into university unless Keith was is helping him? Why should he not get through on his own merit? Why should he try and use his aunt, the leader of the opposition at that time, Sushma Swaraj? Raghav Chadha wants to come in and make a point, Raghav.
First of all, let us understand that quid pro quo does not mean mean that there has to be, change of hands in terms of financial currency. That's one. Number two, this particular incident is only the tip of the iceberg. A detailed investigation needs to happen, because this relationship between the Swaraj family and the Lalit Modi family has been on for the past 22 years, and Miss Swaraj has held very important positions in the government of India, as well as, as an opposition leader. So one needs to investigate that. That's one. Number two, as far as this whole humanitarian argument goes, now how is it possible that every scam or scandal or an act of impropriety by a BJP leader can be justified on humanitarian grounds, and anybody else in the country does it, it becomes an issue? That's one. Number two, if she is today justifying this, saying that this was done on humanitarian grounds, then similarly, by the same benchmark, on moral grounds, she must step down. And lastly, the person who is giving a clean chit and saying that it is not a moral issue is the BJP president, Mr. Amit Shah, who has been previously charged with, cases like fake encounters, murders, etc. He is giving a clean chit on moral grounds. He is nobody to issue moral certificates to anybody, and this is a perfect case of gross impropriety, warrants her resignation, and perhaps, with my limited knowledge of the Indian laws, this could even go to the Prevention of Corruption, Prevention of Money Laundering Act, as well as violation of
on our party president. Speak about your own.
No, 1 second. China, what the BJP needs to be telling us is, what is it? Sanjay Jha wants to come in. What is it that Sushma Swaraj and the External Affairs Ministry has done in the 1 year that's passed to try and get Lalit Modi back? He's partying in Cuba. We've got those pictures. He's been holidaying in Venice. So while he's having this gala time, what is it that we're doing to chase down an offender? Sanjay Jha, is that not the most important question to be asking?
Yeah, Rahul, I think the most worrisome development about today's debate is, one is concerned about whether this is an interference, an obstruction or proscription of a free and independent criminal investigation of all the shenanigans done by Lalit Modi. I think, all of us, I think every ordinary citizen of India ought to be concerned that is this government going to be soft peddling and gradually will obliterate all the charges, because nothing will remain, because Mr. Lalit Modi is clearly a blue-eyed boy of Mr. Modi Sarkar, and that's apparent even at this late hour of the night.
I want to now, we've heard everyone else speak. Let's listen to the response that come out from Sushma Swaraj. She hasn't made a comment on television, but she posted a whole series of tweets. My colleague Maha Siddiqui now tells you what Sushma Swaraj has to say in her defense.
Meanwhile, Sushma Swaraj already tweeted this morning in her defense, and here's what Sushma Swaraj said. Sometime in July 2014, Lalit Modi spoke to me, and in fact, at that time, he told her that his wife was suffering from cancer and that her surgery was fixed for the 4th of August in Portugal. He told me that he had to be present in the hospital to sign the consent papers. He informed me that he had applied for travel documents in London, and the UK government was already preparing to give him travel documents. However, they were restrained by a UPA government communication that it will spoil the Indo-UK relations. This is what Sushma Swaraj put out on Twitter this morning, and then she goes ahead and says that, taking a humanitarian view of this whole issue, I conveyed to the British High Commissioner that the British government should examine the request of Lalit Modi as per the rules of the British government. Really, that is what she said. According to the rules and regulations of Britain, if the British government chooses to give travel documents to Lalit Modi, that will not spoil our bilateral relations, is what Sushma Swaraj tweeted this morning in her defense. Now, Keith Vaz also spoke to me, is what Sushma Swaraj says, and I told him precisely what I told the British High Commissioner. I genuinely believe, is what she says, that in such a situation, giving emergency travel documents to an Indian citizen cannot and should not spoil relations between the two countries.
Okay, in the last part of this first hour of our broadcast, I want to ask Javed, where does the story go from here? Because we're being told now that there are WhatsApp messages between Lalit Modi and Swaraj Kaushal, which bring out the level of familiarity that existed between them, which again could be very damning for Mrs. Swaraj. Absolutely. The last has certainly not been heard in this. We know of WhatsApp messages. We are also told that there are instances of the hospitality that the Swaraj family enjoyed, Mr. Modi's hospitality, at a time when she was leader of the opposition.
There are these, and Rahul, what is happening is the internal dynamics, the contradictions within the BJP also have a hand in this. They are playing out.
So do you think that this could possibly be, as many in the Sushma Swaraj camp believe, an internal hit job, an attempt by her opponents to try to show her down?
Look, possibly, but hit job or not, the facts speak for themselves. The fact is that these emails were exchanged. The fact is that she put in a word for Lalit Modi, and therefore facts speak for themselves. But the last has certainly not been heard, and in the days ahead, there'll be a lot more that will be said.
Sanjay Jha, we've seen members of the BJP itself coming out and suggesting that this could be the internecine conflict within the BJP. Part 2 of what we saw earlier, which Chidambaram versus Pranab Mukherjee, that played out in the UPA regime. Do you sense that this is the internal infighting of the BJP that's coming to the fore now?
You know, frankly, Rahul, in my limited experience in politics, I just tweeted it earlier this morning. I've always felt that there are internal schisms within parties that really lead to these revelations. And the fact that within the BJP there are many split camps which are working against each other is a publicly known fact. And the fact that today everybody knows that there are emerging camps within the party, some of them who gloat on their own failures, I think you're going to see a lot more of these ugly manifestations going forward. But that's their problem, that I think unfortunately plagues all political parties. But the truth of the matter is whatever is today being discussed on Sushma Swaraj is a matter of grave national concern.
Okay, Raghav Chadha, final words. The BJP is saying constantly in Sushma Swaraj's defense, if at all, she did this for humanitarian grounds. She didn't do this to try and help Lalit Modi. She did it because his wife was ailing.
See, again, you know, this needs to be answered in a, in a very simple manner, that how many fugitives from law, how many criminals, how many people who are absconders, who have smuggled black money out, charged with Prevention of Money Laundering Act, FEMA, etc., get such treatment. That's one. Number two, people who are enforcement directorate accused have accessibilities to senior ministers in the Modi cabinet in itself is such a shocking news to the country today. And lastly, this government has been saying that there hasn't been any act of impropriety or corruption. This is not the first one. There have been many, and many would come out. Please understand, the watchdogs of corruption, the institutions that set accountability, have either been made headless or powerless. So as and when, either by such gang wars within the BJP or by certain institutions of accountability in this country, things will come out, and this Modi government will find it very difficult to defend it.
Okay, I'm going to leave it over there for the time being. There are 2 or 3 things that are important to look out for from here. One, we've seen Rajnath Singh speak so far. We've seen the RSS speak. We've also seen Amit Shah speak. Arun Jaitley has been conspicuous by his silence so far. He and Sushma Swaraj at all times have shared a rather fractured equation. I spoke to a very senior BJP leader and asked him why Arun Jaitley hadn't spoken out in Sushma's defense so far. We've said that he told me that if Mr. Jaitley spoke today, it would have seemed very forced. However, I was told that tomorrow morning, if this story's momentum continues, those were the words used, Arun Jaitley will come out in Sushma Swaraj's defense. There are people in the Sushma camp who believe that this is an internal hit job, that an attempt is being made to trip her over. That they believe that this is also being done because in the last few weeks, when the one-year report card of the Modi government came out, she came out on top, and that didn't go down well with some senior ministers in the cabinet. But all that aside, as Javed says, the reality is you've got the External Affairs Minister helping out a fugitive, helping him go to Portugal when he wasn't really required to be in Portugal in the first case. That operation could have been performed in the United Kingdom also. There are very serious questions that Sushma Swaraj and the BJP need to answer. This is what was happening in the UPA. They called it crony capitalism. This is crony capitalism, a crony relationship of a different kind, and it simply isn't okay. The party for the time being is supporting the External Affairs Minister. However, as I said, there are several more dimensions that are yet to emerge. WhatsApp conversations waiting to come out of the cupboard, and we'll be tracking the story very, very closely. For joining us on this broadcast this evening, thank you very much.